All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn football. Go ahead and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Man, it is game week. I mean, this thing has rolled around so quick. Go ahead and like this video, comment, and subscribe. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm telling you to like it like before you listen to it, which now that I think of it doesn't make sense. But go ahead and like or dislike or share the video once you listen to it, however you want to do it. Let's get the likes up, the comments up, because I want this to get a lot of interaction. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Want to give a really big shout out to Lisa Johnson with the War Damn Eagle fan page on Facebook. All of my subscribers, even the ones that support other teams. I mean, I welcome everybody over here. I'm a big college football fan, obviously an Auburn fan, but you wouldn't know it. But I was actually growing up, I was actually a Florida State fan, but I always liked Auburn though, because my aunt, who attended a couple of semesters at Auburn, she just always liked Auburn. And I liked them too. I started kind of watching it around, I'm telling my age a little bit. I started watching Auburn around like 87, 88, during the Pat Dye era and the Reggie Slack days. And then, really started to be intrigued by Auburn, as time went on and becoming a student at Auburn. When I transferred to Auburn from Alabama A&M, I became a huge Auburn fan. Being in that environment, being in that culture was huge for me because I was like, man, to see it on TV is one thing, but to actually experience it as a student and actually go to the games and see the passion. And the thing about it, during those early 2000 stages, Auburn really wasn't that good. But the fan base is just incredibly, almost ridiculously passionate about this program, which leads me to some of my thoughts that we're going to talk about here tonight. As we recap college football week 0, Auburn had the opportunity to see three of the teams that they will play this season. They played this weekend. Vanderbilt took on Hawaii, which I thought was a very interesting game. It looked like Vanderbilt kind of had a dominant performance for the most part, but had to literally hang on to win that football game, beating Hawaii 35-28 at home. Now, the crazy part about this is an SEC game played in Nashville, and there weren't many people there. You would think Hawaii is not necessarily a marquee matchup, but it's not like, Vanderbilt taking on Norfolk State or FCS institution. This is a this is a team that should draw a bigger crowd than that. So I need the Vanderbilt fans to really tighten up and come out and support the football team they have. That they're pretty talented actually, and that's going to be a game that I'm going to look out for in the coming weeks, especially as Auburn takes on them later on in the season. Then you have Auburn's opponent late in the season, New Mexico State, and UMass. They played this week, and UMass, my goodness, this is a very talented football team. This is a team that could scare some folks. I'm not too sure if they'll scare Auburn too much, but this is a much talented team than they've been in the past. They were 1-11 in 2022. Most of those games were lopsided losses for UMass. A totally different situation for UMass this year, as they really dug into the transfer portal. They got him a quarterback, Tayshaun P. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name. I listened to Hugh Freeze's presser today. He ain't trying to pronounce it either. He had an impressive first game, 10 for 17, 192 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he had a great contribution to the run game, 17 runs for 96 yards. UMass has overhauled this roster. They got 22 transfers in the offseason, including Mark Pope at receiver from Jackson State, Deshaun Jerkins from Ole Miss, edge linebacker Jackson from Florida State, And one of the guys that I was most impressed with from a skill position standpoint was Anthony Simpson. He touched the ball a lot, so Auburn is definitely going to have to look out for him. And the quarterback, Tayshaun P., was a transfer as well. So UMass took advantage of the transfer portal, as many schools did, and put themselves in a position to where they could be more competitive this year. They've already won just as many games in week one as they did last year. So I look forward to seeing what UMass presents when they come to Auburn. It's going to be an electrifying environment. The game is sold out. For all that Auburn has been through, and you looking at the excitement that Hugh Freeze brings to the table, especially from a transfer standpoint, especially from the coaching staff standpoint, you gotta really be looking forward to this. Now we're gonna dig into the depth chart real quick for Auburn going into week one. On the offensive side of the football field, you have quarterback Peyton Thorne that earned the starting position. Running back, you got Jarquez Hunter, Demario Austin, and Brian Battie. Now, if you paid really close attention to Hugh Freeze's press conference, and I kind of thought about this in looking at film on other teams that he's coached, I don't buy too much into the depth chart, especially on the offensive side of the football field. I just don't buy it. I don't think this is set in stone. Now, maybe the offensive linemen, we'll see how those guys pan out, because you got left tackle Dylan Wade transfer. You got left guard Jeremiah Wright from Selma, Alabama. Now, this is a recruit from the Gus Malzahn era. And to be honest with you, when they recruited him, I didn't think he was going to make it. I thought he had the size. I thought, he had all the intangibles as far as size and all those other, but I just didn't know if he had the work ethic or not. But to see Jeremiah Wright work his way onto a staff that is very particular about how they run offense, I'm very impressed and congratulatory to Jeremiah Wright for making the cut as a starting offensive lineman on this football team at left guard. Then you got the center, Avery Jones. The center is the most important position, in my opinion, on the offensive line. They anchor the offensive line. They have so many responsibilities. They have to be able to pivot right, pivot left. They have to be able to read certain entities of the defense. The center position is very important. So for Avery Jones to pull that off, I think is pretty impressive. Right guard Cam Stutes and right tackle Gurner Brenton, who is a transfer. Now, what I'm really interested in is how Auburn is going to rotate these wide receivers, because at the Z wide receiver, you have Jair Shorter. At the X wide receiver, you have Shane Hooks or Camden Brown or Nick Martiner. They could all go in that rotation. Now, there's a situation where Nick Martiner might not play due to injury. Then you have the H wide receiver, which is particularly the slot, which I'm thinking Javaris Johnson will handle that position as well. So going into this game, I think Auburn has a really solid depth chart situation with the offensive line, wide receiver, and running back to be able to effectively maneuver through this game. And on the defensive side of the football field, you have Mosaic Kirk, who I think is going to be pretty good at that defensive end. Nose tackle Jason Jones. You have the Jack kind of sort of linebacker Elijah McAllister. Middle linebacker Austin Keys. That's huge for Auburn. And it kind of shows how the defense is trying to kind of coordinate this defense with a lot of deliberation and a lot of, intentionality with shifting some guys around and putting the best guys in the best position to be successful. And at that H wide receiver position, you're probably going to be looking at either Javaris Johnson or Jay Fair. Both of those guys have good playmaking ability, and I think will be very good contributors, because Jay Fair made some really good plays down the stretch. Javaris Johnson made some pretty good plays down the stretch, so that gives them a lot of options. And the one thing that I'm really impressed by with Hugh Freeze is his intentionality in making this offense really deep. He looks to be about 3 deep at least in all positions. So I think that's going to be a really key because, most of us as Auburn fans and students of the game, we've kind of looked at Auburn over the past few years, and it's just been, it's really just been one and a half deep at best. But now you got some depth. Now you got some, hey, if a guy gets injured, you got the next man up that can possibly really do some great things for this football team. Now, as we continue, looking at the depth chart, looking at the talent on this field, you got Austin Keys out of Ole Miss, and then you have Cam Riley, who has been there. He's going to shift over to the will linebacker, which is the wide side linebacker. I think this is a good position for him. I don't think the Cam Riley is a guy that, is really effective with taking on blocks, making the tackle straight up. I think he's more of a lateral movement kind of guy that can really be, it can be advantageous for Auburn on defense. But of course, with the depth, you got to know you're going to see some guys intermingling in this situation because you still have Wesley Steiner, you still have other linebackers that you have access to. Now, the field cornerback, which was a no-brainer, is going to be DJ James. DJ James does a really good job with being out there on the wide side of the field. But one thing about the field cornerback, he's going to have some help from the nickel back and from the safety. So he's not going to be on an island by himself. Now, when you look at the weak side cornerback, which is the boundary cornerback, that's where you got to have some. All cornerbacks have to have skill, but it's a lot of pressure on Zion Puckett because what he's going to have to take on is not only his wide receiver, he's not going to have as much help from the safety. And then you have those pulling guards that are going to be coming out there. You have wide receivers. You have running backs coming on wheel routes out of the backfield. So there are going to be a lot of things that his eyes are going to have to catch in this process. And, you have safety Zion Puckett, which I think that's going to be a really huge thing for Auburn. Now, going into this game, Auburn has somewhat of an advantage, at least from the standpoint of you saw the team that you're going to play against play this week. So you got film on them. The only problem is they were playing against New Mexico State. Not saying that New Mexico State is not a viable opponent, but they didn't show. They probably didn't show all that they were going to show coming into this Auburn game. Much better on offense, and they really challenge you on defense. I was looking at film. They run a lot of multiple sets. They'll go three down linemen with a jack, or they'll go four down linemen with two linebackers. They'll bring their cornerbacks up. They like to do a lot of things to disrupt the offense that they're playing against. And one thing that I noticed, which would be similar from a challenge standpoint, Hugh Freeze came to Auburn in 2013. That was the year that Auburn advanced to the national championship against Florida State. Those were one of the bullet points that I saw that you have to do against Hugh Freeze is you got to disrupt. You got to disrupt because he's trying to create chaos with your defense. With all the wide receiver sets, they spread out wide. They like to run the football, and especially if they have a quarterback that can run the football, it can be very dangerous under the Hugh Freeze offense. But if you have a defense like Auburn had in 2013 that has the capability of disruption, then you could find yourself in an interesting football game, at least early on. All right, so let me know what you think about this video, the depth chart, Auburn actually being able to see their opponents week one, 3 of them anyway, 2 of them played in the same game. Looking forward to this Auburn game. Got some more videos coming this week. The prediction show is coming on Wednesday. Like this video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.